Hey community of awesome, I'm Gabe and this is Bookish Pixie. So once I changed my pseudonym, I started getting a lot of questions that I hadn't really anticipated. And they all revolved around the same question, kind of mixed with concern of, won't changing your pseudonym damage your career? So I want to put these concerns to rest and also talk about why I changed my pseudonym. To start with, I wasn't changing my pseudonym just for the fun of it. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment frivolous decision. I changed my pseudonym because my old pseudonym was misgendering me. And to be clear, my old pseudonym was a pseudonym. That was never my legal name. But it was a feminine name, and it was a feminine name that I was increasingly uncomfortable with as I figured out who I was and began transitioning. Even if changing my pseudonym was somehow going to be detrimental to my career, I would have done it anyway. Keeping my pseudonym, for me, was never an option. So all of that said, it didn't affect me detrimentally because changing pseudonyms is not unheard of in the publishing world. Authors will often use different pseudonyms when they write in different categories or genres. So for example, an author who writes middle grade YA and adult might use one name for their middle grade and YA and a different name for their adult. And a little different, but relatedly, there is also already a small precedent for writers who have transitioned after getting published. When I went to events for my books that are written under my former pseudonym, I just asked people to introduce me as my name with written as my former pseudonym. Honestly, the hardest part for me was just deciding when I was going to change my author name and my author photo. I realized I was trans in the middle of writing my YA sci-fi trilogy, so by the time the third book was getting published, I knew I was trans and I was transitioning. But I also knew that the prior two books had already been published under my former pseudonym, and if I published those books under one name and the last book of the same series under a different name, that would be logistically really confusing. So I decided to hold off until after the trilogy was done. And honestly, that was the hardest part of this whole thing because it meant while I was going to events to promote my last book, I was going to events where I was being promoted as a name that made me really uncomfortable. And even though those events that I went to were really accommodating and made sure to introduce me by my name, but also including my pseudonym, it was still uncomfortable. Plus there was this mismatch between how I looked and my author photo because when I got my author photos taken, I honestly wasn't even comfortable with them then, and I just became increasingly more uncomfortable with it as I got older. And it meant that by the time the third book was published, even though I hadn't started HRT yet, I was presenting very masculinely. And that made for some uncomfortable moments, particularly in spaces that weren't as accommodating. You know, I'll never forget one of my last bookstore events. I was sitting at a table, just me and a stack of my books, but next to me was a giant poster board with my author photo on it, blown up huge, and it was this photo that made me really dysphoric. And that wasn't fun. And what made it even less enjoyable was while I was at said event, I had multiple customers come up to me and look at my photo, and then look at me, and then look at my photo, and then look at me, and say, "You look different." You know? But in those instances, it wasn't the changing my name or transitioning that made things difficult. It was that I couldn't do so retroactively. So I guess the long and short of it is no, transitioning has not detrimentally affected my career. You know, and I do want to say that changing the name that you publish under is a decision that you should take seriously because it is complicated. But if you're trans and you want to change the name that you publish under because it would make you more comfortable, then I really want to encourage you to go for it. But I want to say, if you're concerned that it would be difficult to transition because of publishing that side of things might make it difficult, I want to say that from my personal experience, my agent and my editors have been nothing but wonderful about it. And if you don't have a supportive publishing team, then you need to find a new team. Because you can find supportive people in publishing who want nothing but the best for you. Now, changing my pseudonym was an anxiety-inducing process, but I'm so glad I did it, and I don't regret it for a second because it means that the books that I publish going forward are going to be published under my name, and that is really awesome. So that's what I got for today. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and comment, and I'll see you all soon.